All right. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you again after 1 week.
Yeah.
Dan Spring here, Chair of the Board of Finance for the town of North Stonington, calling our Board of Finance meeting to order. Date April 28th, 2021, for the time at 7:03. Currently present is myself, Dan Spring, Dan Smith, Carolyn Howell, Paul Simon, Brett Mastriani, and Sarah Nelson. Nita Kincaid, I see that you're on, and thank you for sitting in. Okay, public comments, Christine.
Okay, Mike Anderson is signing on right now. And so if we have any public who have a comment, please either raise your hand or unmute yourself and go ahead and start talking. We don't have our regulars, so we may not have any public comment at the top of the meeting.
Maybe we get out in an hour, that means.
In that Ann Aiken is not here, I'm sorry. Carolyn, you were so kind and gracious to do it last week. Would you do the same this week for Ann?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's appreciated. In correspondence, I haven't anything really to report. During our meeting last week, there was one other resident that had emailed in, and just so we have her name for the record, it was just the same thread, Darlene Wagner. And that sometime during the afternoon today, I did get correspondence from Joe Gross, and it was a pie chart relative to the expenditures of the general government. And I've got it on my phone. I left my copy at the office, but it was late enough. I didn't send along, nor did I have there was no narrative. I had no sense as to what any of it meant. So, and then I thought Joe would be on. Carolyn?
When I checked my email this evening a little while ago, there was an email from Dorothy Arzamarski asking questions. I forwarded it to the entire board.
Okay, I haven't checked that. She was on last week.
Yeah.
I recognize the name.
She has questions that she would like answered. If you want, I can read it.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
You were the only one who responded, so I guess I will direct my questions to you. I would still like to know where the bus transportation savings was allocated. Also, when I first looked at the budget online, I noticed line items $19,450 for elementary school repairs and $23,150 for middle high school repairs. If I'm not mistaken, do we not have brand new schools, and are they not under some type of warranty? Why do we need that amount of money for repairs? Where is the transparency? All I would like are answers so I can decide where in my personal budget I need to make cuts. And then she included this other thing. So I forwarded it to you and everyone else so that you could answer her questions.
Okay, I probably don't have the answer to all of them. I know that both Peter Nero and Christine Wagner had talked about the bus savings, and that I do know relative to the middle school that they were having problems with the plumbing of lavatories in the locker room area. And that only because I sit on that committee, we went into minimal water reserve toilets, and there's a sense that as that goes down, it's not enough to carry it through the piping that was already existent. So that part was not new, even though the toilets were new. So I know that that's been under investigation, and we have a school modernization program committee meeting coming up and we'll probably have an answer, but I know that was an ongoing issue that we probably had to put money forward to satisfy whatever that investigation was. So I do know that that's an ongoing issue. And we don't have anyone on from Board of Ed tonight. So I'll follow through with that and give more distinct answers. But we don't have anyone from Board of Ed on this evening.
They're, Dan, they're still in their meeting, so they might pop on shortly. Just to let you know.
Dan, can I give a general response to the warranty question?
Do I?
No, can I give one?
Oh, yes, of course. Yes. And there is warranty on.
Yeah,
what-
so on
Yeah.
new construction projects, it's generally a 1-year warranty. So we are 2 years out on the middle high school. We are 1 year out on the elementary school. And since this is the budget for next fiscal year, both of those warranties will have been ended. So there would be general maintenance needs on any new building. Whether it's filter changes or different things that need to be done. So, just like if you have a brand new house, you're still going to need to change light bulbs and change filters and clean things. So.
Right, and Christine, that's not on the equipment. That's just the actual building. So it's,
Yep.
I think some people are confused from some of the equipment warranties and stuff like that that were installed. So yeah, I think that was a good point about the building part itself.
Yeah, and I think, Christine, I know you're familiar with it, that plumbing issue has been ongoing. So, and again, because I don't sit on all those meetings with the school, with the people who did the construction, I don't know where we're at with that, but I'm sure I'll have a status as we have our next school organization committee meeting. All right. Anything else in correspondence? Anybody? Okay. So we're on to agenda item number 4, our budget review, which we took a lot of time with last week, ending our meeting after 11 p.m. And so as we left, was a thought of, well, what possible scenarios should we look at to kind of box our options? And so I spent this last week going over the numbers, and listening to the Board of Selectmen meeting last night. And I really see 2 options here that I think we all have to weigh in on. And I think it kind of is a culmination of all of our deliberation that we've had to date. The first option would be, in that we've had such an impasse on where we were with the budget as it was presented to the public hearing and our discussion thereafter, is to move our budget as we have proposed forward to the public. And I got that sense from the Board of Selectmen's meeting last night. The second option, if we were to respond in making cuts, as opposed to looking at line items as we have been, I think you recall me saying that 20,000, for instance, is not going to move the needle. So I went through all of the numbers with a recommendation of, or suggestion of, okay, what would move the needle? And to move the needle, we would have to make a cut of $150,000 from the total budget. That would mean if we were to be just judicious relative to the allocation of the budget, 100,000 would come out of Board of Ed, 50,000 would come out of general government. And Christine, I don't know if you would just plug those into general to our OpenGov. It would give the board members a sense of what that would mean in terms of mill rate and donation, if any, to the unassigned.
Yep, so what I'm sharing right now, I did get the revised grand list number from the assessor from the results of the BAA. So this is the official new number. It didn't move the needle very much in a good way. And so if we change the estimated budget and reduce it by $150,000, that would bring us to a 28.9 mill rate with $21,400 going back into the undesignated fund.
So with that, I'll open it up for discussion, relative to what I've presented. The 28.9 would put us 0.4 mil over what we know is our baseline. The baseline is the 27.4 plus the 0.8 for use of undesignated, and then 0.3 for debt redemption. And I did not go further with moving around the unassigned. I know we had some discussion there, as we brought out. In order to do that, it means having a balanced budget, which would entail cuts. So this was kind of the in-between. So the 21.4, if that were to go back in, that could satisfy. I know some of the discussion was to backfill the first selectman's salary, if that should be one spot, or there, should be some left for something else that had been left out.
Dan, that is putting the 0.8 back in for the,
It is.
okay. So if we split that, that would even help the mill rate even more this year.
Except you'd have to make more cuts, Brett, to balance the budget.
Gotcha.
Paul, I see your hands up, and then Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Yeah, so this feels like the right direction for me to go. We're paying for the monies that we've decided to spend in previous years and a reasonable amount of cuts for this year's budget. So this, while it still represents, a pretty healthy tax increase, I believe that it's something that I can certainly support, because it closes the books on what we spent in the past, still giving people increases to their budgets without too much further damage to their existing budget. So thank you for this work, and I think this is something I could certainly support.
Thank you, Paul. Sarah, I bet you next, then Mike Anderson.
What's the scenario without the $150,000 cut? What's the mill rate?
We were at a 29.2.
And okay, so it's 0.3 different.
Yeah, so she's got it on the screen now. Thank you for doing that, Christine.
What does that mean to an average house? Like, what's the difference in money that they're saving?
I didn't have Del Grosso do that, and sometimes I do that, and would do it before the town meeting. And I think it's relative, and that's why I usually bring it to the town meeting, but not in this discussion. And there's certainly going to be some savings, but it's not going to be extraordinary. And it shows some response to some of the concerns, even though some of the people who did want to see tax decreases didn't want the Board of Ed budget touched.
Yeah, so if if you, I don't know if anybody knows how to do the calculation. But say you had a $5,000. I don't know how it works, but if you're normally paying $5,000 of taxes a year on your property, on your house, what is that difference of that 0.3 mils? What is that? Like, what would it be at 29.2 versus 28.9? Sorry. I'm happy to learn how to do that so I don't have to ask again, but
Well, the easiest thing to do would take an average value of a house at 300,000 or 350,000.
okay,
They're only being assessed at 70% of that,
gotcha.
and then we're applying the mill rate.
Okay, so you're at 350,000 times 0.7.
Again, you have to check my math too, I guess, but I think this option represents about a 5.5% average increase in taxes, whereas the first option that Dan laid out represents about a 4%. Again, my math has not been second person verified, but that's what I came up with. And that's just based on present mill rate versus proposed increase.
Yeah, Dan, if you want to move on while we validate, I would like to
Okay with
actually
that.
sort the numbers. Thank you.
Mike, you're next. Mike Anderson.
Can you clarify something, Dan, that you just said to Brett in response to his saying that if we didn't do the full 0.8 to fill the hole, we're not doing a balanced budget? Is that the now stance of our chairman of Board of Finance?
Yeah, and we talked about this at last meeting. If we weren't able to feel comfortable with bringing the 0.8 mil forward, and it was 0.4, with the budget that we have proposed to the public, we would have to come up with cuts of 0.4 mil to balance. Because we're bringing revenue forward of 0.8, we cut that for balanced. If we don't change anything within the budget and we only come in with 0.4 mil added revenue, it means you've got to cut expenditures by that same amount to balance.
No, I disagree with you.
And how so? If you're bringing forward less revenue, you've got to have less expense.
I understand that. But right now you're increasing the mill rate by 0.8 to fill the hole, right?
Yeah, it's essentially revenue that we brought forward, that 440,000.
Right. So instead of doing 0.8 for new taxes, you're doing 0.4 for new taxes and 0.4 from the undesignated fund. You don't need to find another 0.4 of cuts.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, your thinking there is correct, but I didn't think that we were saying we were bringing another 0.4 out of unassigned.
That's what the whole proposal is, of let's not hammer the taxpayers with a full 0.8 this year. You do 0.4 from the taxpayers, 0.4 from the undesignated fund, like we did last year. It doesn't mean that we have an unbalanced budget, and I don't like that. That's now becoming a thing, because we did it last year. And if we, and it's, as Christine said at the last meeting, you're perfectly welcome as a Board of Finance to take from the unassigned to put into the budget. So
Yeah, so that's how you're balancing the budget. So
I'm bound,
you're doing another dip into the unassigned to make that happen.
correct.
Okay.
My proposal last week, so option 3 for everybody's review is that we do not cause cuts of staff in the Board of Education budget that we all agreed was really well done to begin with. And we don't do further cuts to a Board of Selectmen budget that was strongly vetted and already cut to the extreme, and where people, including Joe Gross, who is probably the most knowledgeable person who's commented on these proceedings, has said, we've been remiss in cutting the Board of Selectmen government budget and capital budget to the degree that we have. My proposal does something for both sides. Okay, we do not decimate anybody's budget further. We actually take the 29.2 that we had that would have $41,780 going back into undesignated. We take that $41,780, we put the money back in for the selectmen. And the other thing was does anyone remember what we were talking about as a second thing that could put back in the budget?
Money to 298.
Money to 298. We put money in the budget for 298, so we're not in non-compliance. And then we take 0.4 rather than 29.2 has 0.8. So rather than taking that all from the taxpayers, you put 0.4 back in out of the undesignated, you end up with a 28.8.
Okay. I'm sorry if I misunderstood what you first were talking about, Mike. I was presenting something without going back to the unassigned.
Yeah, I think that has to be, I think that should be on the table, because not to interrupt you, Dan, I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah, I just think, yes, people want to have, not as much of an increase. And even Sean Murphy suggested we bring back, we use half of the undesignated for this year to fill in, to not burden the taxpayers. And he said, 2, then 1, then 1. I don't, we have to see where we are next year, but I certainly think using the undesignated fund again to lessen the tax burden kills that, the one bird of tax relief, and the second bird of allowing us to still add some things in that I think are necessary in the budget, and not look for cuts to these budgets. I will not support $150,000 cut to the budgets.
So we're back at our impasse then.
Well, that's just my opinion.
No,
Paul, you said your piece, and
Yep.
you've been going that way the whole way, and you and I are just on different philosophical ends of the spectrum, and
Yeah.
but we have other board members here that you have to convince, or I have to convince.
No, I understand that. I think adding more spending, I think, would be a tough hill to climb for many of us.
But listen, I mean, it's not yes, it's spending, but it's not silly spending, because that money is going back to undesignated where we have plenty of money. And it doesn't change the mill rate at all, because that 41,000 is that's the extra going back. So I just think it's a good use of the money. As is using, 0.4 mil of the money to not burden the taxpayers.
Relative to your reference, Mike, to Sean Murphy in the draft minutes of last week, when Sean spoke, he criticized the Board of Finance for excessive use of undesignated fund balance.
Yeah, I didn't get that, Dan. And I saw that in the minutes, and I disagree with that. I don't know, he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, because in his letter to us, or to Carolyn, he said he wants a certain amount of budget and you should use the undesignated fund again to fill in that budgetary gap of at least half of it now. That's, if anyone else, I'd like to hear from other people. That was my recollection of his. Carolyn can look at the, bring out the letter.
Why don't we go to Sarah, then Brett, and then down to Dan Smith. Sarah?
Okay, I'll come back to Mike's comment in a second, but I did the math on, I used the example that you said, Dan, a $350,000 house at 0.7% valuation multiplied by the tax rate without the cut. The cost was, the taxes were at $7,154 multiplied by the 0.0289 multiplier with the 150,000 cut. It was $7,080. There's a difference of $73, which I'm calculating as about a 1% difference in taxes between the two scenario. $70 being about 1% of
As I suggested, it probably wasn't going to be a big move, but in terms of our response, bringing forth a cut, that's what it looks like.
Yeah. So I think to me, that reinforces what Mike's saying. I think we're being a little penny wise, pound foolish. I would rather put the budget forward as is. I think we're risking, the services that we have in the town by not funding them appropriately, both on the selectmen and the Board of Ed side. If we try to do more cuts on top of all of the work that we have to do to recover from COVID and all the setbacks that our children have had and the school has had, et cetera, and all of the cuts that we've already done to the Board of Ed, to the Board of Selectmen budget. I don't see, it feels like it just doesn't feel like it just feels penny wise, pound foolish. That's all, in my opinion.
All right, Carolyn?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I was just going back to my email so I could print this out again. So I'm just looking at Sean's email. I don't know that it says anything in here about. Oh, here, other, consider using 200,000 from undesignated fund to help balance budget after making reductions, reduce to 100,000 following year and eliminate after that. So that was his suggestion regarding what you were just talking about. And then I just received another email. I don't know if anyone else got this. So this is from Priscilla Lewis. If you want me to read it, I will. That
should be in public comments, so.
Okay, I'll save that.
We'll have another opportunity. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna say that I'm not a fan of cutting the Board of Education budget for a lot of reasons this year. The first being that it's their first full year as being like a school of choice. And like I said, I would hate to take their legs out from under them when they're just getting going. Secondly, I can't even imagine having to have been either A, a teacher, or B, a parent of a child in school right now during COVID, and also maybe even having to work outside of the home or in the home while all of this has been going on. So for me, as a mom, as a parent, I just don't believe it's the right thing to do. I think that we have to find a way to make it work this year, and then, next year reevaluate that. And I'm not opposed to taking money out of the undesignated fund. I don't think it's, great. I'm not thrilled about it, but I don't see a way around it entirely, because people are struggling. There's a lot of people struggling, and a lot of people, even with this increase, they're going to be paying more taxes, even if they're in, an average cost home. So, and we don't know what's coming from Hartford. We don't know what's going to happen with the utilities. I mean, there's just so many things up in the air right now that I think we have to do what we can to help the people. And obviously, we're not going to make everybody happy no matter what we do. So I think we have to find a way to meet in the middle and then help people where we can, as far as helping them, like the elderly on fixed incomes or disabled persons who are struggling, along with helping the parents, the schools, and giving the children the support that they're going to need just to get, recovery from this past year, if that's even possible at this point. So that's all.
Just in quick response, I mean, if we were to use 0.4 mil from the unassigned, if you just applied it to the calculations that Sarah developed, it doesn't make a big change. So we're probably maybe, I'd be optimistic 2% difference from where we are. And we still would be in a position of having to satisfy that revenue taken in the subsequent year. Dan Smith, and then I'll come up to you, Brett. Dan?
Yeah, so Dan, what are the real numbers for like the 0.4 that we'd be taking for that?
What if we put it in OpenGov, you mean, or?
No, I'm just trying to. We're dealing with mills and everything.
What
okay. What is 0.4?
228,000.
228K.
And so Sarah was kind of presenting the 150,000, so you can kind of equate it that way.
Yep.
So,
sorry.
we're talking 50,000 more. So in terms of a tax savings, it's not a big one. It helps the optics, but it also then puts the Board of Finance in a position where it has to satisfy that revenue take.
So my opinion is, the 0.8 has always been the thing I've been talking about. We have to fill that hole. I don't see how we can get around doing a half this year and half next year just to cover it. I would like to see a number of, we have all these options, we have all this. I'd like to see what the final percentage, if we enact any of these, what it would do to the undesignated fund as a delta. Is that something we could get?
In terms of what the balance is in the undesignated?
Well, what the balance is currently, and then what these options would affect, basically the end total of what the undesignated fund would be. Because if we do the 1 and we kind of do the 0.4 this year and the 0.4 next year, or we spread it over 2 or 3 or however many years, it would be nice to know what the final total is going to be.
Yeah, so here's the response, if you want to make note. With the appropriations that have happened through this fiscal year, are so the undesignated is encumbered. So the unencumbered number is 3,000,000 $21,855.20. Which represents like 14.5%. I haven't done the calculation, I'm doing it in my head.
Would you guys like me to put together the scenario that Mike talked about with putting the first selectman salary back to where it was, putting 30,000 for 298? So adding that into the budget figure and then figuring out the mill rate with about 220 coming out of the undesignated fund? You want me to do that?
Sure,
In the
we can do
background.
that, absolutely. Yep.
Me personally, as much as Mike Anderson is strong about cutting the school and basically not cutting the school and everything, I am strong. I was the one who made the motion to cut the first selectman's salary and to reinstitute the pension back. I would be strongly against reinstituting the salary for that. I think with $50,000 and having the pension reinstituted, I think that's more enough incentive to get a qualified candidate for that position. And any of these options where we would be either putting $20,000 back into the budget, back in the undesignated fund, or 41,000 and change back in the undesignated fund, I would like to see some of that money go to 298 Norwich Wesley Road, or put forth some of it towards the per diem firefighter that we don't have. At least we can fund some of the hours, not all the hours that they requested.
Okay. While we're waiting for Christine Diaz, Brett, and then Carolyn. Brett?
Dan just took some of my points regarding the money back. I don't agree with Mike Anderson on if we round up to put that money back in the selectman's salary and reverse the vote of the Board of Finance. I would like to see, if we do round up, that money to go into for now, if we have to, a half of position for the firefighters, as that was one of the requests from multiple people at the town hearing. And then hopefully we can get the rest of the money through the CARES or the relief fund. And listening to the Board of Selectmen's meeting last night, it doesn't seem like there's an appetite to wait a little bit longer to find out what else we might be able to use from that fund to help the taxpayers right now with this budget. But I would agree with Mike Anderson. I am open to splitting up the 0.8. I think with COVID, this is a crisis year. This is a time to look at that. Even taking that money out, we are still at the higher percentage end of our reserve fund compared to other towns in the state. And I think it would be very difficult to push a $100,000 cut on the Board of Ed at this time, with the unknowns of next year of how we're going to get our kids back up to speed, how the summer is going to progress with education. I do think, listening to some of their meeting tonight, with the turnover in staff and administration in following years, that I do think there could be potential savings for those years in the Board of Ed that could help us mitigate some of these expenses in the future years. I yield. Thank you.
Right, I just did the calculation on undesignated against the proposed expenditure for 21-22. It would put us at a percentage of 14.26%.
Dan, I'm ready with calculations.
Yeah, sure, go ahead and put it up, Christine.
Okay, so I added back into the budget in expenditures, $38,698, which making the mill rate 28.8, has you taking $223,491 out of the undesignated fund to balance.
And what was the added added expenditures you put in?
I put in 38,698. In theory, it is $8,698 to make the first selectman salary back to the current rate, and then to put 30,000 in for expenses for 298 Norwich Wesleyan Road,
Okay, thank you.
just for discussion purposes.
Yeah, it's good.
So what that essentially does is you'll have a carry forward of 0.8 mil, give or take, in the next fiscal year to satisfy kind of where we are now.
At 0.4.
Why would it be 0.8? Yeah.
Who did I say was next? I lost
You
my-
said, Dan, can you clarify that? We have a 0.4 carrying through to next year.
Yeah, we would put, of the 0.8, we would have 0.4 we would have to make up next year.
Right.
Plus any increases to operating budgets next year.
Right. Brett, go ahead.
Do
Then
we have,
Mike.
do we have any handle, a little more accurate on what some of our carryover or leftover from this year will be? I know there's stuff at the end of the year, but Christine, do you have anything that would,
No, it's far too early. Some of the things that we took from the undesignated fund for additional appropriations, we may see the repayment of that because they're grant funds. We may or may not. It depends on when we get that funding back from whatever the source is, if it's the state or somewhere else. CRF funds have been received this year and weren't budgeted for this year. So we won't, I know you want to know now. You're not going to know now. You're not going to know June 30th. You will have a better idea by the end of July. But some, as I've mentioned before, some invoices don't come in until the very, very end of the fiscal year. So we don't have a sense at this time.
okay, thank you. Yeah, I am a proponent of splitting up the payments back, but I do still worry about the added appropriation for 298 and how much that really will be. Because we have to remember that's going to also come out of the undesignated fund at some point. But I would rather split that up compared to trying to just arbitrarily have the Board of Ed cut that budget and the selectmen cut anymore. I think we're in a better position this year that the town is going to have a voice and a vote. So we aren't the ultimate deciders in this budget, but the town this year will get to vote. And I think that's important to remember as we do push this forward or not, that even if we don't personally love this budget, at least the residents will get to decide this year. And I think that's so much more important than it was last year.
Thank you, Brett. Christine, the amount that was going to go back in the budget, I might have mixed up my numbers. Was it 38,000 or 36,000?
38,698.
Okay, so, okay, I'm good. All right. Mike Anderson?
Yeah, just to comment on what to do with the remaining $41,780, or the 38,698 that Christine just mentioned. I am certainly not trying to overturn, what the Board of Finance decided, on the budget, on the vote on the light item. That was in reference to a strong advocacy on Joe Gross's part, and the fact that I think that the amount of time that the first selectman puts in warrants us putting that money back in, but I'm not married to that as long as we can come to an agreement that, using $223,491 from undesignated to fill the gap, and putting money into either 298 or 298 and part of the per diem firefighter. Let's hash that out and get it done. My one concern is, spending money on on the firefighter, which I'd put in the budget right now if I knew that we weren't going to get money from the federal government that couldn't go to that, I'd put the whole money in the budget. But I also don't want to, spend money on that and put it in the budget when it could definitely be paid for out of those funds. I mean, but if that's a consensus amongst my fellow board members to put money towards there, I'm on board.
Yeah, I think if we can get to kind of what the total package would be, then that drop down discussion would happen. So, we're talking about three options. Carolyn?
I think if you're putting money back into things, that maybe you should consider using some of it to go back to fund like the senior center and the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center. I mean, for those things, I mean, you're talking, I think, about $2,500 if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, for them, it's a huge difference. It can make a positive change in someone's life, where for everything else we're talking about, it's at this point, neither here nor there. It's not going to make much of a difference one way or the other. So I would like you guys to consider that as well.
Sarah, you're next.
I agree with Carolyn, and I agreed with what she said earlier too, just sort of about the school. It was very well said, so I won't repeat it, but I do agree, cutting services like to the people that are most impacted by COVID while we're still coming out of the impacts of COVID, when it's a small amount, that could go a long way. I would agree with her on that.
All right. So folks, just so that, I don't want us to go round and round. We have three options, and we could do a poll on this, or somebody could present an option. So a motion to one of the options. I think that almost everyone is saying, let's leave the Board of Ed budget alone. So I think the option 2 of taking out 150,000 just out of the budget and making the correction, that option seems to be out. So it comes down to no change to the budget, or the use of 223,000 out of the unassigned to mitigate the budget that we've already put forward. And then, as I said, if we can agree there, then whatever goes back into the unassigned that could be reallocated within the budget, we can talk about that. But let's get to the big picture first.
So could you walk us through, Dan, that option 3 again?
Sure. Option 3, very similar to what we did last year, but rather than replacing the entire 0.8, let's use Mills, we're going to replace 0.4, but then we're taking 0.4 to balance the budget that we have presented. So on the budget side, we're keeping everything the same. It's
Okay,
just
so
whether or not we're using the unassigned to help mitigate what we would levy in terms of the mill rate.
so we are talking about the same budget, no increase in spending, no more salaries increase, no other
No,
firemen, because I agree with Mike. I think that the rescue package should fund that next fireman for 3 years quite nicely, but no additional, nothing for 298, nothing like that. at this point. Is that accurate?
Yes. So again, I think we could come to the reallocation that would go into the unassigned in the scenario.
Dan, I could make a motion.
Sure.
Have we gone through all the arithmetic already? So that would represent a what, 28.8?
Yeah,
Yes.
so
Yes.
what I just did on the screen, I don't know if you saw as I did it, but I put the budget back to the budget that was presented at the hearing, the $21,185,008 is your estimated use. I left the mill rate at the 28.8, so now it's taking 184,793 out to balance the budget.
That would be a 1.4 mil increase.
Yeah. So how do we get to the last number you put up?
So the
38,698.
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead,
got
Kristen.
it. Yeah, you didn't put it back in. Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah.
just since everyone was talking about not changing that, I figured I would just put those numbers up in black and white to make it a little
Yeah,
easier.
perfect. Yeah, that way we don't have to debate how to reallocate it.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Mike, you're up.
Well, is there still discussion? I mean, I guess this could be discussion right now, but my motion is going to be with the $38,698 still in play. Not necessarily allocated anywhere, Paul. It could be reallocated back to undesignated. Or, or we decide that we're going to allow the Board of Selectmen to decide what to do with it, or we're going to allocate it, following this particular motion.
And we're toggling this number that you have, this cell you have highlighted, Christine. This 223 is
491.
out of undesignated fund.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
the other, and the
This
number we
number
had,
here is the new budget number with that 38,698 additionally added to expenditures. However, you decide to allocate them.
right. So that proposed tax increase, which again is 28.8 minus our 27.4.
Remember, it's a decrease. We're at 29.5 currently. Technically speaking.
Yeah, not really though, right? It's still gonna be.
No,
people's
technically
wallet.
the number on the paper is 29.5.
It's
Yeah.
a mill rate increase, but not a tax decrease.
Correct.
Mill rate decrease, not a tax decrease.
What was that, Brett?
It's just a mill rate decrease. It's not really a tax decrease.
It's absolutely not a tax decrease. It looks nice, I guess. But it's certainly a tax increase.
The 5.1% increase.
Yeah, okay.
It's an
So-
expenditure increase.
Oh yeah, it's spending, there's no doubt.
It's an expenditure increase, but there is more revenue. Therefore, we have a tax decrease.
There's more revenue because we're increasing taxes. That's why there's more. So believe me, we can
We
spend
have
it
more.
all we
We have
want.
more.
People's wallets are lighter after what we're going to propose.
Some people's are. Yes, some people's are, but some people's aren't.
And I'll just add this. It has some relevance to where we are. I brought this out in our last meeting, is that assessment on homes here in North Stonington were done in 2010 at the very trough of the Great Depression. So people were taxed at a much lower value to home at that point. And they had that, they had to appreciate that unknowingly for the last 10 years, quite frankly. And now they've had increase in the value of their homes. Again, probably the largest asset they have in their portfolio. And the mill rate increase for our current year was only 1.7% over the previous year.
No, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
So it would be easy to be, to say, okay, we're balancing up, we're roughly, covering what would have been maybe a 3% increase to the mill rate last year, this year. But you're going to have some carry forward to the next year, which you can't forget,
We won't, and we haven't.
right?
We just keep thinking about it.
So I think Mike was kind of formulating a motion. I don't know if. you
Yes,
got it.
I was gonna vote to move the budget as presented at the town hearing unchanged, except with $223,491 coming from the undesignated fund to fill the gap, leaving a surplus of $38,698 to either be used on further expenditures or put back in the undesignated fund.
All right, Christine, just so you and I have a quick review on the motion. Anything there that we're not comfortable with?
So I think, Mike, you need to either make the motion to increase the expenditures to $21,223,706 and the allocation of that additional 38 and change to be determined.
That's
Or-
probably, that's much better.
Okay.
That's because the numbers are solid. Because,
Yeah, 'cause-
all right, I got it.
Yeah,
I got it.
either you want to spend that money or you don't.
Right.
And so either you go with the increased budget or you go with the budget the same and then the amount coming from the undesignated would be the 184,793.
Understood. Got it. All right. So my, strike my last motion. I move to put forward the budget of $21,223,706, using $223,491 from the undesignated fund to fill any revenue gap, with $38,698 to be determined in usage for expenditures.
That's cleaner. And I'm sorry to have to rework it there, Mike, but
No, it's much better.
Yeah, okay.
And it could be better than that. I don't know. You guys tell me.
no, I think we got what we want there. Yeah. So Mike has a motion. Is there a second to the motion? I'll second the motion so we can move to discussion. Then we can take it to a vote. Paul, you were first and then Brett.
Again, I'm sorry, guys, for being a bit daft here. So if we're going to say we have $38,000 and some change hanging out there, why wouldn't we just reduce what we're taking from the undesignated down to the 187? Or is this because we're trying to make some funds available for other stuff?
There seemed to be a sense of, the 298 seemed to come to the surface more than not. And firefighter probably behind that. So for those amount of dollars, does it make sense? We're talking a difference of roughly $40,000, give or take. 38,698.
You think it doesn't make sense because it's such a small amount, Dan, or does it make sense, not make sense even talking about it?
Um, I think there's rationale to minimize what we're taking from the unassigned,
Yeah,
but for the 38,698, there seems to be agreement that we got a place where we could put it. And have more functionality in the budget, something that's being served as not being, as opposed to not being served.
and those decisions on where to spend that 38 grand will be ours here tonight. Is that what we're thinking before we?
Yes, we can do that. Yes.
Okay.
Sarah, you.
That was my thinking, Paul, if I just may.
Yeah. Sarah, we're still.
Again, sorry for the daft thing.
No. And Sarah kind of brought out the point the last meeting. If rather than putting it unassigned, should we make it functional? Put it into the budget that shows that those dollars are being utilized. So, Sarah, you're next.
I think there are a few people before me, Dan. And I was just gonna.
Because I'm making notes, I might have lost the order, and
Yeah.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. I just agreed with what you said. I heard 298 brought up a lot by a number of the board members. So
Okay, Brett, you're next.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Paul. I'd be more in favor of the 187 coming out of the undesignated fund. And then if we needed some, I think then it's up to the town for an appropriation to move forward on that. I feel more comfortable doing it that way than adding in money and then figuring out where it goes. I have a problem voting on it that way. So I would totally support Mike in his motion if he took out that 37.
38,698.
Yeah, it just feels cleaner and more, honestly, more transparent to me. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Carolyn?
I'm just bringing this up for the people that we heard from last week, concerned about their taxes and on fixed income. So is there a feeling of how serious the selectmen were in making that happen this year, that program, so that these people, if they were struggling to the extent that they felt they had to apply for some relief, is that going to be available to them? Because you're still talking about,
yeah,
the mill rate's going down, you're still talking about a increase for people that, may not be able to absorb it. And I don't.
can I respond to that, Dan? I just wanna, because I did some research on it. Most of the,
It's kind of away from the
Sorry.
discussion of this motion. I would
Okay.
say that. And so I just wanted to make a response that I know they did tap Daryl Del Grosso to look into it. He thought there's more work for him to do, but if he were to look at the demographics of the town, we would be mitigating about 300,000 in tax revenue. So that was a quick brush. And I think the Board of Selectmen, as I heard it, wanted to move forward with that initiative and learn more about it. But we've had 1 week. And so I think kind of the answer to what you're bringing forward, Carolyn, is that's being moved forward. But, we're in discussion on this motion. And so if we can keep discussion to this motion, we can get this piece of business done. Dan Smith?
Yeah, mine will be quick. I'm leaning more towards the 184 being removed out of the undesignated fund. It's just, I got a feeling that we're going to end up needing some of that money down the road. I know the library has hinted around when they were giving their presentation that they were looking for the bump this year, and then also coming back to us for future appropriations for their work that they're doing at the library. And I just feel that we're going to have other bills that we're going to have mounting up between the school and other things. So I'm leaning more towards the 184 being removed out of the undesignated fund.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Mike, I'm back up to you. I think you're hearing some of the discussion.
Yeah, I'm totally hearing my fellow board members. My only thought in using that extra money, seeing it presented as Christine does, I agree. It looks nicer having that less money coming out of the undesignated fund. My only thought was to make sure that we weren't putting us into a bad position by not putting something into 298 that should be there. Again, I'm forgetting the word that was thrown around.
Supplantation.
That was my
Supplant,
yes,
Supplant.
supplanting. So that was my main concern, guys. But again, this is not my, the major fight for me. The major fight is that the budget should remain as they are. And the relief to those taxpayers that got increases should be from the reduction to doing it down to 4.4 mils rather than 0.8 mils. So if that's consensus, guys, and gals, I'm with you.
does that mean that you would reword your motion, or you do want to leave it the way it is, Mike?
I'd rather keep the discussion going on what I just said. And if this board feels okay, then I would be fine revising my motion accordingly.
All right. So Mike's kind of leaving the door open a little bit. Is there something more to be said here? Dan Smith?
Yeah. So perfect segue in 298. Have we received any information by I know, Dan, a couple of weeks ago you were going to talk to somebody and that didn't really work out. By us putting that line item to 0, do we get any more information on this magical term of supplanting? And if we are doing that by doing what we're doing?
Yeah, the conundrum we've got, Dan, is that we don't have clear definition as to how the money could be utilized, and could it be utilized against 298? And we don't know that. And whoever I've talked to, the definition of utilization hasn't come forward. So if they could say that, yes, we use this building for COVID and our students, and and then I would have a stronger case of maybe some money should stay there, so we're not supplanting. But in that it doesn't make it clear at this point, should we or shouldn't we? So, I mean.
Yeah, so it sounds like no matter which one we're going to choose, we're going to probably choose wrong.
Well, I'd like to be optimistic.
Well, I'm just saying you
right.
can have 5 different people and get 5 different answers on this.
Exactly.
It
Sure.
sounds like, I don't know. I hate putting money into something that, knowing my luck, if I was doing it, it would be as soon as we put $1 into it and they'd be like, oh, see, you allocated funds to it. You can't do it. And you should just left the line item 0. It is what it is. So
what I would say relative to the argument, and I want everybody to hear this, is that 298 is an asset of the town that does represent an obligated liability. In other words, we have to pay for it. Carolyn?
If 298 is an obligated liability, then there should be money in the budget to pay for those expenses, regardless of how much you choose to put in there. There should be money in there because we know that you have to have lights and heat or cooling. That's where you're planning on having your town meeting. So clearly we have to keep the lights on.
Yeah, I agree with that. Brett?
I was just gonna ask if we could move to vote, move the question to vote.
Sure. Mike, we're maintaining the motion as it stands, or?
Sorry,
He's finishing his dinner.
Yes, let's vote on the budget as presented. I mean, the motion as presented.
Okay. Just get this order here for voting. Bear with me a minute. Okay. Dan Smith,
No,
Carolyn Howell,
Sorry, I had to find myself. No,
Paul Simon,
No,
Brett,
No as presented.
Mike,
My vote is yes.
all right. Mike, I'm going to vote with you as a yes, with kind of a bias towards 298. However, that means it's a 2-4-0, does not pass. I would like to present a motion to leave the budget unchanged, but using 184,793 from the unassigned to fill the revenue gap for the proposed budget.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion there? Mike Anderson?
I just think, maybe we leave 10,000 in for, 298, or 8,000 for 298 and 2,000 back toward the Pawcatuck Center. Those small dollars, could mean a lot for those programs. And taking them out of the budget, I just think that maybe we could satisfy a little bit of, the hurt that people feel by funding some of those smaller programs with the dollars that they're asking for.
Any further discussion? Any comment relative to Mike's contribution?
just that I think it continues to cloud, right? So I think we have a motion that the people saw, they heard it. I think those are the spends, those are the expenditures that we should bring forward without adding other very good causes, but the people saw this budget. Let's move it like it is.
All right. It's a call to move the budget. Dan Smith, or the motion, I mean.
First, as always, I guess. Yes.
Okay. Bold, Dan, bold.
Bold moves, yes.
Carolyn,
yes,
Paul,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Mike,
No,
and I will vote yes. So we are at a 5-1-0. The motion passes. All right, so this is what will go to a town meeting. So Christine, we have to have a motion that the budget numbers stay the same.
Correct. The budget is the same as was presented at the town hearing.
So we don't need another motion. I was thinking in my head that the numbers changed. If that was the case, we had to have a motion with the numbers. All right. Fellow members, thank you. I know it's a push and pull, a compromise, but I think we've done a good job, and still, the door's open for a few tweaks hereafter. We'll see what the public has to say. So, thank you for hanging in there for all these meetings and all these hours. And I also thank you for your candidness. I mean, I think only with some debate, deliberation, difference of opinion, we draw each other out and hopefully come to common ground. All right. That means we can move on in the agenda to Sarah's policy on budget reconciliation.
I don't have updates, Dan. I had a couple actions to make some updates. I haven't sent the revision.
That's
I have
fine.
not sent the revision through yet.
We still have time.
Thank God, Sarah.
Thank you too, Sarah.
What? I thought you were super excited to talk about my policy. Oh my
I
God.
am next in July.
Yes, from my boat.
Was it Mike, your cohort on this?
Yeah, and I'm still happy to talk about it in July.
All right.
Means we can move to agenda item number 6, previous minutes. Carolyn, again, thank you. She brought forward the draft minutes for our April 21st meeting. So if we could bring attention to that and do a quick review.
She left me out of the meeting at the top. That's the only one thing that I saw.
Well, we got to put you
Sorry,
in. there.
Mike.
That's okay, Carolyn. I know you
She did
had
have,
me in there later on, so I wanted to be consistent. I thought I saw something else. Let me just, can we bring that up? Can we share the screen on that?
I don't know if Christine has got them. Christine Diaz, do you have it?
No, Carolyn didn't send them to me.
Okay.
They're on the town website under draft minutes.
Let me see if I can pull them up.
I can forward them to you, Christine, if you want.
I got him, yep.
I put the links in for the meeting so that if people wanted to watch it rather than me trying to retype.
The only thing was on 4.
Yeah.
You had Dan Spring, you didn't know what his vote was on that. The polling regarding the Board of Education budget, you had a question mark there.
Right.
I think he was a yes.
Yeah, it was for leaving the Board of Ed budget at that time.
Do you remember what your vote was?
Well, because it was kind of in a double negative here. Let me just see here.
I didn't write it down.
Yeah, my vote was to leave the budget as it was in this polling.
Right, that's what I thought it was. I thought it was 2 yays and 4 noes, was my recollection.
Yeah, and the other thing is we talk about it being a polling and then we refer to it as a motion.
I think they started
Yeah.
out with motions and then it turned into polling, so I'm not sure how you want it documented.
I would just say, it's still on the table.
Yeah, I don't recall that. I know that I said polling when we talked about that, so it was not a motion.
No. Just say it's, as polled, the Board of Education state is still on the table for discussion. Is what I would say.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I saw that was,
And I had one question too, on, I think it was number 2. Joe's calculation, $330,602. Is that, do we know that to be true? Is that, or is this?
I
public
don't know.
comment?
It's a number that he keeps. I
Yeah,
have it written down. It's what he said, so I don't know if it's true or not. I
yeah.
don't recall that, but again,
No, I know he said that number, but I've never verified. And these are public comments, so I guess it's just understood that these are just opinions of the people, not necessarily facts.
I thought we were going to put a disclaimer on there that we talked
Yeah.
about at the last meeting or 2 meetings ago, that all public comments were not
Opinions
verified.
of-
Your opinion.
Right.
So where do you want the disclaimer? Because I'm not normally the one to type the notes.
You could put a star next to public comments or an asterisk. And then at the end of the minutes, just say that all public comments are considered to be opinion. Okay, with that, I would make a motion to approve the minutes of a Board of Finance meeting dated April 21st, 2021, as amended.
I would second that.
Paul's a second. Any further discussion? All right, I'll assume that we're 600 on it. Yes, okay.
yes.
We'll give that one a check. All right, future strategies. I think Nita's still on. And Nita, given that we are where we are now, I know the Board of Selectmen will call a special meeting for the call. And when would that happen?
Well, if you could do it tomorrow, it would stick with what we were going to do by May 3rd. Or if you feel you need more time, you would have to go to the next week.
Yeah, we are done, which means that the Board of Selectmen, or we make a motion for the Board of Selectmen to call a town meeting.
Mike is here, I believe. I think that's what happens.
Mike has signed off. So what needs to happen is that the Board of Finance needs to motion for the Board of Selectmen to move forward to call for a town meeting. The selectmen need to schedule a special meeting to do the call for the meeting. We will not meet the May 3rd timeline because that's Monday and it's already Wednesday and it has to be in the paper for a minimum of 5 days.
Okay, so I make a motion that the Board of Finance, upon approval of the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021-22, request the Board of Selectmen to have a special meeting to call a town meeting for a presentation of budget.
Second,
And that's Dan Smith.
Mike just hopped back on. Dan,
Okay. Was he listening at all, Mike? Did you listen at all, or?
no, so catch him up real quick.
Mike, we just have a motion on the table for the Board of Finance, having the Board of Finance requesting the Board of Selectmen call a special meeting to call a town meeting relative to the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021-22.
Okay, yeah, I think what the action would be that you just recommend the budget to the Board of Selectmen and that's all that needs to be done. And then the Board of Selectmen will then determine, how and when the the town meeting happens.
Okay, so the Board of Finance recommends that the Board of Selectmen move the budget forward to a town meeting.
Yep, that's all. And then just, you know, what the numbers are.
And the numbers will be the same, Christine and Carolyn, as presented at the public hearing.
Carolyn, do you want me to go over them just so you have them?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the general government operating budget is 5,178,341.
Yeah,
Redemption of debt, 1,382,949.
Yeah.
Education, 14,371,465.
Yep.
And capital, 252,253.
Yep.
For a total of $21,185,008.
thank you. And that does concur to our last print. Okay, and if we could have a vote on that. Let me just put the names back in order here that I've had. All right, Dan Smith,
Yay.
Carolyn Howell,
Yeah,
Paul Simon,
Yay.
Brett,
Yeah.
Mike Anderson,
I am voting yes to have them go to town meeting.
okay, and yes for myself, so that's a 6-0-0. Passes. All right. So Anita and Mike, with that said, what's the calendar?
Mike, we had it on here that, and I think this is from something we did before, that it could have been done tomorrow morning, and then it would be able to go in the paper on Friday. Is that not true?
Well, we have no meeting scheduled, and we need to notice any meeting 24 hours in advance. So no, there'd be no meeting tomorrow.
Okay,
So we'll regroup and discuss what the plan would be.
well, we still have a whole nother week that isn't a problem, so I think that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we can't make the date that was supposed to be the date. So at this point, we'll regroup as a Board of Selectmen and decide how we want to proceed.
Okay, fine.
Okay. With that being said, it just will inform the board that I have a medical appointment that is going to take me out of commission for a couple of weeks. So that happens on May 7th. So if the town meeting is beyond that, I've already talked to Paul Simon. Paul will determine, who takes the lead there. I'm assuming he will. And if it should be a week after that, I'm with you, but I'm probably going to be tied up. So, all right, everybody understand?
Yeah, understand. Thank you, Dan.
And, thankfully, a lot will play off of what's already been presented at the public hearing. And Christine Diaz could help supplement the deck with what's happening in terms of how we're filling the revenue gap. All right. Any Board of Finance members' reports? Anything, Carolyn, I know you're on a couple of committees that you're listening in on, one that you're active with. Anything that you have to report?
I haven't been able to sit in on the Board of Ed just because of my work hours. I have been attending the meetings for the
298.
298 North Westway Road. So, that's moving along. We're kind of waiting to hear back from Joe Courtney's office on the grant that the town applied for. So hopefully we'll hear favorable news. And
Which would be very exciting.
yeah, that's about it. I mean, I think that's all.
Anyone else? All right. Why don't we move to public comments?
Okay, so if we have any public that want to make a comment, please raise your hand, and then you'll be recognized. Joe, go ahead. Joe, you just got to unmute.
Hello,
We can hear you, Joe. Go ahead.
I was questioning on my comments on my figures that I gave you, 333,602. I don't mind you taking public comments in that, but mine are fact. I want to show you the line items which came up with that figure, and if you could take a picture of me here, I'll show it to you here. I'll provide you with the line items. I don't give anything, it's just a general comment. I give you facts. So them are facts. Line items per line item to the dollar. I can give it to you. My main thing here is we, the town, have worked many years to bring the first selectman's salary to where it is, to a full-time position. In his meeting with state capital, senators, congressmen, and them individuals making hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? We're gonna send an individual up there making a bigger $50,000. People, it's the 21st century. The days of committing 18 hours daily, 7 days a week, including a few holidays, are gone. The town was very fortunate to have that individual commitment. The Nick Mullanes are no longer with us. Society today would not support them. Neither is the cost of the town for the travel, the lunch, the lodging, and anything that he never charged the town for. You must be charged for it now. So people, let's look at it and bring us back to the 21st century, not drop us back. Took us many years to get that salary to where it is, and it's still not where the heck it should have been. I tell you, I will do everything I can. I'm sorry, I cannot support the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen budget. I do support the Board of Ed budget. Again, I give you people facts. And I would hope you would give me the same courtesy. It's not saying it's just a general public opinion. I'll back up everything that I've said to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
You know, Joe, am I still on?
You're still on.
Even with the cost of what we have here, we did the study. The highest town in town is Bethany. The highest town the lowest town in the state is Columbia. North Stonington just quivers in there. What these are 3 towns with the similar population, taken by the first selectman's salary. The high is Bethany with the first selectman's salary of $84,000. Their total cost of government is $242,934. The lowest is Columbia. Their first selectman's salary is $12,078. Their total cost of running their government of the town is $324,842. North Stonington, with a salary of a first selectman of $50,000, we still have a total cost of our government of only $164,110. If you put it back to where it was at $64,948, we would still only have a cost of telling the government is $179,058. Bethany has a first selectman, administrative, financial, being a secretary and others. Columbia has a first selectman, town manager, administrator, financial secretary and other. North Stonington has first selectman, administrative, financial thing. People, you gotta put this money where it belongs, and we gotta keep the public up to where it should be. It's at our responsibility not to leave them stay in the 19th century. That's it. Thank you, guys. You gotta take a good night's sleep. You
Thank
put
you,
in a lot
Joe.
of non-sleeping nights.
And next,
Okay.
Chris,
Yep, phone number ending in 3754.
Yes, this is Sean. I heard in the motion about the amount of undesignated fund balance to use to balance the budget. I don't know for sure what the mill rate you were using to figure the current revenue, tax revenue. Can you answer what that ended up to be, what that is?
yeah, we
Is
had
it 28.8 mil?
28.8.
Okay. At 28.8 mil for the average taxpayer, it would mean a 5.1% increase in their taxes. I can't support a 5.1% average increase, knowing when there is a good number of households that, because of their assessments going up dramatically, will pay significantly higher than 5.1, more like an 11% tax increase in our most of the homes within our neighborhoods. So I can't support 5.1 on average. Thank you.
All right, Sean, thank you. I know at a previous public Board of Finance meeting, public meeting, that you advocated for a 28.5 mil, which would have been a 4% increase. And again, I think we have to recognize that last year or our current year, we raised the mill rate by only 1.7% by using the unassigned. So thank you for your input. Next, Christine.
Carolyn?
I just had the email that I told you I received from Priscilla Lewis right before, well, it was after we got on the meeting, I guess, or I just didn't get it in time. She wasn't able to attend, but she said that I do feel we should increase the pay for the first selectman, but also requires scheduled town hall hours. This position does require the person to attend many meetings. I realize the Board of Ed budget is probably complete, but I had a concern of the non-union administrators giving a 3% raise. They may not have received a raise in several years, but their salaries are still high and the benefits and the time off significant. After our meeting Monday, I feel that maybe money deducted from their raises could be used for the 10,000 needed to fix the tunnel. I've seen kids using it several months ago on my way home from the dump. If it is closed, will a crossing guard be needed? I think students will take the shortest way across Route 2 and not be concerned for safety. Cameras seem to be popular now, but there aren't any in or near the tunnel, and there should be. I almost got hit by a car many years ago crossing Route 2 before the casino came in and before the gymatorium was built. So those were her comments regarding the budget. I mean, at this point, it's neither here nor there, so that's all.
Okay. Brian Rathbun, go ahead.
Yeah, couple of things is, one is this thing we got where under public comment, where you don't like opinions, but public comment is it can be a fact or opinion, but basically it's how a budget or whatever the public comment's going to be is going to affect the person or persons that they talk to and represent. And who determines what is the fact and who determines what is the opinion? I think public comments is definitely a way for the legislative body to voice this to the Board of Finance so they can see what's going on with the budgets, how it's going to affect the people, how it's going to affect, just like the reval did. So that kind of goes out the window with me. Not that you got to do anything about it, because it's only my opinion. The other thing is, I don't support the budget. I didn't when I went to the hearing. So I just don't like the idea that it's the same budget. So anyways, that's just my opinion on that. And I want to let you know, I'm not going to be supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, for your input.
Tula Balistrossi, go ahead.
Hi, I just want to say that I appreciate all the time and effort the whole board has put into this process. I'm tired just watching it. So, Dan Spring, I do appreciate the patience that you have. And I'm glad that you guys all work together on this. I did get a lot of feedback from the previous meeting, and just because we don't all log in live doesn't mean that we aren't all watching. So I just want to say thanks and have a good night.
Tula, thanks. And for anybody else who's listening, I mean, these meetings are archived and are accessible, beyond real time.
Joe Gross, you have 2 more minutes. Go ahead.
I got a quick thing. I was a little upset. I think, Brian, as I mentioned it too, that public opinion can be fact. And maybe you could ask the individual whether they're giving you fact or not. My other concern is, and someday I'm going to get the answer. We voted for a contract, and the contract had $1 million to demo 298. We used the money where we had to take some other things that came up. But as a taxpayer, I still paid $1 million for that demo. And I feel you are going in there now and still adding monies to building 298. Remember, you went to referendum and over 1,000 some people voted to demo that. Then you had a little special meeting with 100 people and they voted to put little learning things in there. Well, we're going to have another meeting and we're going to have another vote. And I think the Board of Finance should be prepared where you're going to get the money, $1 million to go back and demo like we wanted to. So if you're going to make any cuts, I would recommend, please, look at 298, cut what you're putting in there, because we already gave you $1 million and we didn't do what the contract said. That's it. Thank you, guys.
Joe, I know you bring up that point multiple of times. But the referendum was also to have an elementary school renovated as new. And by doing so, we did have an overrun on remediation of biohazard material. And
Dan, I agree with you, Dan. And you had to make that decision with all them PCBs and everything in there. And you did elect, that committee did elect to take the money from the contract for the demo. What should have been done is go back to the taxpayer for the monies that you needed for that portion in the elementary school. I don't take it away that you had to continue going with it. My concern was I don't believe we should have just cut the other one. That's all. But you're correct in what you're saying, Dan. I don't disagree with the PCBs and that. I believe the town had no decision except to approve the additional money that had to be taken to clean up that elementary school.
yeah, and my final point there, Joe, is relative to the referendum and the dollars that were approved by the town, that we were not allowed to overspend on those dollars approved.
You can go back to the town for the money, though. It's meant for an unconcerned thing that showed up, all right?
No, you are correct
Okay.
there. I'm talking relative to that referendum and what was approved by the taxpayers.
No, I'm not, Dan, I'm not disagreeing the point. I don't disagree. You did make the decision. I believe the decision was an error. It should have gone back to the taxpayer. It didn't go back, but the contract for the demo was not completed. And if it was completed, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Relative to the middle school, Joe, and I'll close with this, is that we have a subcommittee working on that, and a number of options are being worked on currently relative to the middle school that I think
No, I think
either
so.
result in its demo, or it's going to bring more value to the town.
I would say though, Dan, in my own experience, I would recommend that somebody go back and look at some of them rooms, and maybe we could pull some of the wires down, sweep the floors, and close the closet doors, so whoever's gonna rent it will look at a nice clean room. And I say that as a fact that I looked at when I got my last vaccination shot. It was there for the first one, it was there for the second, and I would guarantee to say today, Dan, if you make your daily rounds, if you took your daily round tomorrow morning and walked down that aisle and looked in them rooms, you would see the wires laying on the floor. You would see the doors open like somebody just ransacked at the joint and stuff was hanging down.
All right.
I may be wrong on that one, but I doubt it.
On your observations, Joe, I would take them to heart, and I'll talk both to the selectmen and to the subcommittee. So thanks for that observation.
So take a check for me, Dan, if you would, please. I know you do that stuff.
No, I will follow up on that, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dan.
We have a hand up again from Sean Murphy. Go ahead.
Sean, are you on? Did you want to be recognized? I'm assuming not.
Guess not.
I'm sorry, I thought I had unmuted it. You there?
We're
Yes,
here.
Go ahead, Sean. Are you there?
Yeah, it didn't work the first time. Has the Board of Finance ever received a closeout of the school project with a detailed report of how the money was spent and how the different mortgages financed it and so forth? Have they ever seen a final audit?
No.
They will. We have not been to that point yet. We're not to the final closeout. It may happen as we meet in the next school modernization meeting, which is coming up. Is it next week or Thursday, Christine?
Monday.
Monday.
I just don't recall the Board of Finance throughout the project receiving any reports on the school project with any that had any amount of detail in them.
Well, I think that the reports from school modernization are public, and each of those meetings have been archived, so that data is available.
I attended those meetings, and they never presented anything publicly that would give any inclination of those figures. Witnessing those meetings, they were all about approving invoices and not financial reports.
Okay, well, I'm in touch with the chair of that committee, and I'm sure that report will be forthcoming. And Christine Diaz, I don't know if you have any comment relative to that. You're as familiar as I am with that.
No, I would disagree. There are updates, financial updates at every meeting, so we'll agree to disagree.
Yeah, in terms of the
Thank-
ultimate closeout, we're not quite there yet, Christine.
Not there yet. Nope.
And there were
Thank you very
subcommittee, there were subcommittee meetings where people the chairman of that board, as well as other members of that board, met with Downs and with Rusty's group weekly and a lot, and went above and beyond, making sure the numbers were always on point. And we did, as a board, hear every time we had a meeting of what this final situation was and where we were with the budgets and whether or not we were on budget or not. So
Mike, do you know if there's financial reports generated and available then?
offhand, I don't, but I'm sure that there has to be a packet that we've submitted to the state of Connecticut to get reimbursement. There's financial data, I'm sure that's available, but Christine can back me up on that.
John, I would recommend that you reach out to the chair of the committee if you're looking for a specific report.
Thank you very much.
Joe Gross.
Amy, unmute. Am I?
You're unmuted, Joe. Go ahead. Now you muted yourself.
How's that?
That's better. Go ahead.
Talk, Joe.
Okay.
You want to go home?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to give you another fact, though. I gave you facts from the minutes from both them committees, the repurposing committee and the modernization committee. And from day one to the last meeting they had, both of them had problems getting information as to some of the questions. I'm not positive on what them were right at this time. That's why I'm not going to do it. State exactly what Sean said or not, but there's been some problems trying to get information there. And I feel bad for I think the first one was the modernization building. Is that committee? Is that the one that Mike and Dan, you guys were on? The modernization committee, that's the first committee.
That's the one Dan and I were on, yes.
Yes. And halfway through, he started another one, a repurposing committee. And both them committees have been asking the same questions and they haven't had them. I did talk to Pam too also, and I believe people did go in the right direction, and she has done the best job that she could do. There are a few things to be completed before the closeout is done, and I agree, but I'm not saying that you did a bad job. I attended one meeting, and I felt at that meeting you guys were one of the better boards that we had. However, there's a lot of questions to be answered on there yet. I just appreciate the help that I get from you. Oh, my head.
All right, Joe, thank you.
Never mind, I should turn myself off.
I'll mute you. Okay, no more hands. I appreciate everyone's public comment. Thank you so much.
And I would reiterate that. Thank you, Christine, for preempting my comment. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Dan.
Second.
Paul and Dan Smith. I'm assuming we are in concert on adjournment, and I would put the time at 8:56. And again, board members, thank you so much. I totally appreciate your effort. And I think we have a good budget with compromise that will go to a town meeting and referendum. So thanks. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, Dan.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone.
Yep.